ready to like really rethink how we lead.
Mm-hmm.
We're ditching that whole like lone hero at the top thing today. We're diving into the world of group-centered leadership.
Okay.
You gave us a huge stack of sources on LMX, team leadership, and shared leadership. Buckle up.
Yeah.
We're going to find out how these theories actually play out when you try to use them.
It is super interesting how often, like, we all just default to that top-down leadership model. But all these theories that we're looking at, they challenge us to reconsider,
Yeah.
who's really in charge.
Yeah. It's not always the person with the big title, right?
Right.
Like take leader-member exchange, LMX.
Right.
Ever notice how some colleagues just seem to have that like in with the boss?
Mm-hmm.
They're always the ones getting the best assignments, invited to like all the important meetings.
Yeah.
That's LMX.
Yeah, exactly. LMX is all about the relationship, the quality of the relationship between leaders and people on their teams. And it's not always a level playing field. Like you said, some people end up in the in-group and others are kind of left out.
It's like you're always the last to know about a new project, or you always get stuck with the jobs that nobody else wants to do.
Right, yeah.
Happens all the time.
It's a common experience. That's why it's really important to understand how LMX works.
Yeah.
All these sources that we're looking at highlight how these relationships, these different quality relationships, impact everything.
Yeah.
Job satisfaction, who moves up.
Everything. So how do those relationships actually like develop? What happens?
You can think about it like going through different phases.
Okay.
So it starts with the stranger phase. Everything's super transactional. It's like that awkward first day at a new job when you're trying to just figure out where the coffee is.
Yeah.
And then you move to the acquaintance phase, a little more trust. You're sharing a little more information, kind of like you're grabbing a coffee with a colleague and you're just starting to click.
Right.
And then ideally, you get to the partnership phase.
Okay.
This is where there's mutual loyalty and respect. This is your trusted colleague. You can brainstorm with them.
I like it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is there like a formula, a secret formula to get everyone to that partnership level?
I wish there was.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, no magic formula.
Okay.
But research shows that actions always speak louder than words.
Yeah.
So things like, are you delegating important tasks?
Oh.
Are showing empathy?
Okay.
Are you acting with integrity consistently? That's how you build those higher quality relationships.
So you're not just like using your team,
Yes.
you're actually trying to like build them up.
Yes. And, earlier LMX theory was all about being as efficient as possible.
Right.
And, finding a select in-group. But the research now shows that if you try to have those high-quality exchanges with everyone on your team, you end up with better outcomes for everybody.
Right. But even with good intentions, I feel like there's always that power imbalance between a leader and the people on their team, and that can create all kinds of problems.
Absolutely.
One thing our sources pointed out was that leaders might, without realizing it, favor the people who are similar to them.
Mm.
Whether that's their background or their interest or even just the way that they talk.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And demographics might not be the deciding factor, but it's that perceived similarity, right?
And that can really mess things up even when everyone's trying to be fair.
That's right.
And it's not even just about who gets promoted. Our sources talked about how even little things, like if a leader always shoots down someone's ideas,
Yeah.
that can like snowball and cause all kinds of other problems.
It's true. Like those little interactions can really change how people see each other and how they act.
Right.
It can turn into like a self-fulfilling prophecy where the people who are already on the outside, they just kind of stay stuck out there.
Right.
Like that saying, seeing is believing. That's definitely true when you're talking about teams.
Totally. And that made me think about another thing from our research. Sometimes having a good LMX relationship has less to do with being good at your job and more to do with having things in common or even just liking someone.
Yeah, it's kind of a tough pill to swallow, isn't it?
Yeah.
We all want to think that the best person gets the job, but the research says that we care about how we feel about someone way more than we think we do.
Yeah, it's true. Like, all those sayings, like, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Right.
They're kind of true.
Exactly. Now, this isn't saying that it doesn't matter if you're good at your job.
Right.
But it does show how these things that you might not even realize are going on
Right.
can really affect who gets ahead.
Okay, so for those of us who are like, all right, I want to make LMX work for me, not against me, what should we be thinking about?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that leaders and team members both need to be really self-aware. Leaders need to pay attention to how they're building relationships. Are you asking everyone to work with you? Are you giving everyone a chance to give feedback?
Yeah.
When you're deciding who to promote or when you're reviewing someone's work, are you thinking about your own biases?
So it's about being really deliberate and understanding that everyone has their blind spots.
Yeah, exactly. And for people on teams, remember that you're not powerless.
Okay.
You can build a better relationship with your leader, even if you're not in the in-group to begin with.
Okay.
Show how good you are at your job, look for ways to connect with people, and don't be afraid to stand up for yourself.
Love it. Okay, so let's switch gears a little. We've been talking about one-on-one relationships. Now let's talk about how leadership works on a whole team.
Okay.
So next up is team leadership. The main idea here is that the leader shouldn't be the only leader. It's less about telling people what to do and more about helping your team learn to manage themselves.
It's about shifting from thinking about the leader to thinking about the team. The leader isn't the hero anymore. They're more like a guide who creates a space where everyone feels like they can contribute and be a leader themselves.
That sounds great, but I feel like it's probably not always easy when you've got all these different people trying to steer the ship at the same time.
You're right.
Yeah.
Sharing leadership can work really well, but you need the right conditions.
So what are those conditions?
Well, our sources said that one of the most important things is that the team needs to be interdependent.
Okay.
So if everyone's working toward the same goal and everyone needs each other to succeed, shared leadership is more likely to work.
That makes sense.
Exactly. When everyone feels like they need each other, they naturally want to help each other out. But even if you have a really interdependent team, the people in charge still need to support them.
So it's not that leaders are giving up control. It's that they're creating an environment where shared leadership is part of how things work.
Exactly. It's about giving people what they need, getting rid of obstacles, and being a good example of how to work together.
That makes sense. But let's be real. Our sources also said that there are some downsides to this whole shared leadership thing.
Yeah, one problem is that if everyone's a leader, things can get kind of confusing, especially when it's time to make a decision.
Yeah, like who's really in charge?
Exactly, and then everyone's just waiting for someone else to make a decision, and nothing happens.
Right. And our research said that shared leadership might not work as well in teams that have been working together for a long time.
It's true.
That's so weird. I would have thought that the longer you work together, the easier it would be.
You would think so, right?
Yeah.
But it turns out that it can be really hard to break old habits and power dynamics, even when everybody wants to share leadership.
So even though sharing leadership seems great, you have to really think about it and look at how your team works before you try to make it happen.
Absolutely. It's about finding that balance between giving people power and making sure that it's clear who's responsible for what.
Okay, so speaking of responsibility, there's one more part of group-centered leadership that we need to talk about: power dynamics and bias. Because that's where I feel like those nice-sounding theories about working together and sharing responsibility kind of crash into the reality of how power works. It's like we want to build these teams where everything's fair and everyone works together,
Oh, yeah.
but we're still using the same old system,
Yeah.
and some people still end up getting left out.
Exactly. And that's where this idea of inclusion is so important. We can't just say that we know these power dynamics are out there.
Yeah.
We have to actually do something to change them and create an environment where everyone can contribute.
So we need to do more than just talk about how much we value diversity. We need to create a culture where everyone feels like they belong.
Yes, exactly. And that means changing how we think. We have to remember that every single person brings something unique to the table,
Okay.
their own perspective, their own strengths.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what their title is or where they came from.
So our sources talked about how important it is to build real connections.
Yeah.
But how do you do that? How do you go beyond those super awkward icebreakers and actually build real relationships with people who are different from you?
Yeah.
Especially when you're thinking about differences in power and experience and stuff like that.
Well, the first thing is to create what's called psychological safety. People need to feel like it's okay to speak up,
Okay.
to share their ideas, even to disagree with their boss.
Okay, so like, how am I supposed to tell my boss that I think they're wrong? I'm already getting stressed out just thinking about it.
Yeah, it's definitely not easy, and it takes work from everyone involved. Leaders have to be open to the idea that they don't know everything,
Okay,
and people on teams have to feel like they can challenge how things are done.
so you need open communication and respect. Everyone needs to know that it's okay to take a risk and be themselves.
Exactly. And that is when amazing things start to happen. You get all these different perspectives coming together.
Right.
And that leads to better ideas and a much stronger team.
So inclusion is kind of a journey, right?
Mhm.
It's something that you're always working on.
You got it.
It's about learning and unlearning and trying to create a better workplace for everyone.
Yeah, I like that.
Well, we talked about a lot today.
We did. We did.
LMX, team leadership, shared leadership.
Right.
And we talked about all of it through the lens of inclusion and power.
Yes.
And I think the biggest takeaway is that even though these new ways of thinking about leadership have a lot of potential,
Yeah.
they're not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
It's not enough to just say, okay, we're doing things differently now. You have to be willing to really look at yourself and how you do things.
Very well said. And at the end of the day, leadership isn't about being in charge.
Right.
It's about helping other people be their best.
It's about recognizing that everyone has something to offer. So as you're going about your day today, think about this. How can you make it easier for the people around you to achieve their goals? How can you use your influence, it doesn't matter if you have a fancy title or not, to make things more fair and equitable for everyone?